Nothing But the Truth.
Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has completed 4 years of his second term as Prime Minister. In all, he has served for 9 years in the highest political office of the country. Surveys have shown that Prime Minister Modi's popularity is extremely high despite the passage of time. What is behind this remarkable success? What is the style of Prime Minister Modi's leadership? In this episode of Nothing But the Truth, I will bring you 10 Modi mantras of success, or 10 mantras of Modi's success. And I did this by speaking to people that had worked with him closely, both cabinet ministers as well as officials. Let me start with Modi mantra number 1, and that is double S, for speed and for scale. Prime Minister Modi is very fond of using this alliteration, which he calls 2S, and in the past, he has, in fact, talked about the way the Congress government did it, and he said for them, both these were a luxury. But for him, he said, size and speed is a necessity, and it's India's ambition that they should do both. And he has demonstrated that with immense achievement in the last 4 years, and even in the past. Let me take a recent example of what he did. We all saw the inauguration of the new Parliament House. I live in Delhi, and I was amazed that within 2 years, that building came up, and that's what when he talks about speed. I went for the inaugural session, and you could see the scale. It is a beautiful hexagonal building. There are peacock motifs all around. The flooring is made of carpet that is woven in Uttar Pradesh. Every detail has been taken care, and technologically, also, it is up to date. It has computer screens on every seat, and you could see the excitement and the way that he talked about what he had done. And he called it the New India. And he said he could see new enthusiasm, new hope, and in many senses, Prime Minister Modi had imprinted himself in terms of posterity by putting up this huge building that will last, he said, for more than 100 years, because the way he's planned it is that there are enough seats in Parliament that even if there's been an expansion, which is possible in 2027 and could go right up to the century, this Parliament House has almost double the seats than what the old Parliament House did. Now that comes to Modi mantra number 2, which is a clarity of purpose. And I'm going to take the example of this when I spoke to Ashwini Vaishnav, the dynamic Union Railways Minister, apart from being holding the portfolio of 2 other important ministries. And he told me when he joined last July, he was appointed in July 2022, a couple of months later, he made a presentation to Prime Minister Modi of how he would be designing 50 new railway stations and what would be the expansion plans. Now, what struck him about Prime Minister Modi's approach is, firstly, Prime Minister Modi listened intently to him. This is one of the qualities that many of those who interact with Prime Minister Modi say, that he is a great listener. Then he began to ask very incisive questions. And one of the things he asked is, how will this help the common man? The second thing he asked Mr. Vaishnav, the Railways Minister, is, how is this a cosmetic change that you're making, or is this a fundamental economic structural change that you're bringing to the railways? Now, Mr. Vaishnav, Ashwini Vaishnav, spoke for 2 hours. He made this fantastic presentation, over 50 slides, and at the end of it, he was very disappointed when the Prime Minister said, I will not approve this plan. So he went back home, and around 11 in the night, the Prime Minister called him and he said, you know why I didn't? Because what you have done is you have looked at these stations as they would be today. What I want you to look at is, what will these stations be 50 years later? So you have to plan for the future. Don't just look for today. You have to see the entire perspective and then do it. Now let's look at Modi Mantra 3, and that is to have a long-term vision. He demonstrated that when he announced the Jal Jeevan Mission in August 15th, 2019, soon after he was appointed as Prime Minister for the second time. And what was the Jal Jeevan Mission? He said, Har Ghar Jal, which means every house should have tapped water supply. Amazingly, or maybe shockingly, that if you look at statistics, overall, in terms of rural households, I'm talking about, when he made that statement, barely 16% of India's rural households had tapped water supply. Then he called one of his most trusted officials, Bharat Lal, and he made him in charge of the entire Jal Jeevan Mission. What he then did was very important. He not only gave the resources for it, but asked Bharat Lal to employ technology. So Bharat Lal, who has known the Prime Minister even in his Gujarat days, set up this elaborate dashboard where you could look, using data analytics, satellite feeds, Internet of Things, you could monitor anything that was happening on the ground in the village, and every day they would get on their dashboard exactly which village was done. You could go right down to that particular house and see whether the tap was fitted or not, and whether water supply was there. And the scale and the speed with which he did it meant that, as I speak today, 62% of those households now have tap water supply, and that is an amazing feat because it has just taken barely 4 years. It was actually launched during a lot of COVID was happening at that time, and yet that didn't stop it. And this is what he means, that when you have to do things, you have to do it with that speed and the scale that is important for this country. Now let's take a look at Modi Mantra number 4, and that is to use technology as a force multiplier. If Rajiv Gandhi was credited of making India computer savvy, he brought computers into the country when he was Prime Minister in the mid-1980s, subsequent Prime Ministers built India's digital backbone. But to Prime Minister Modi's credit, he took it to a whole new level, he upgraded it and began to use it as a force multiplier. I will just give you one example of that. He universalized Aadhaar, the Aadhaar identity card that all of you have, I have it as well, and then did the next big thing, is that he got people, poor people, to open bank accounts in a program called Jan Dhan accounts. Now, you know, India's poor was unbanked. Millions of them were unbanked, and in 4 years' time, close to 400 million people got bank accounts. And in terms of women, there were only 18% of women who had bank accounts when he started the program, and by the time, and right now when I speak, there's close to 80% of women who have bank accounts. The third aspect of it is he used mobiles. He popularized mobiles. And that's when we come to what is called the Jam Trinity, which is your Jan Dhan account, your Aadhaar card, and your mobile, and that became your identity. And so what he did was, for these massive welfare schemes, people got the money directly transferred to them under what is called the direct benefit transfer, which meant that if my name was on that list, I didn't have to go through a middleman. The money would come straight from the government to me. And that was very important, because why I mentioned Rajiv Gandhi was, when he was Prime Minister, he said that for every rupee of welfare that we spend, the beneficiary gets only 15 paise. And what he meant was that there was tremendous leakage. Corruption was there. People were taking away the money that was meant for these poor people, and they got only 15 paise for every 1 rupee. The direct benefit transfer, in fact, reduced that considerably. Possibly, I wouldn't say eliminated, there is still loopholes that is there. But when I spoke to Amitabh Kant, who is the former CEO of Niti Aayog, as well as currently the Sherpa for G20, he said, what Mr. Modi has done, Prime Minister Modi has done, is brought a digital revolution. He talked of saying minimum government, maximum governance. The DBT scheme is a great example of how he showed that if you did this, you could change people's lives, particularly the poor people's lives. Now let's look at the next Modi mantra, and that's number 5, how to convert adversity into opportunity. When Prime Minister Modi took over the office for the second time in 2019, within 6 to 8 months, we had the COVID pandemic on us. It is a once-in-a-century event, and the Prime Minister had to handle that crisis. Immediately after that, almost within 2 months, there was intrusion by Chinese troops on the line of actual control. And for the first time in close to 50 years, there was actual scuffles and people, Jawans, died in that. The third thing came much later when in 2022, the Ukraine invasion happened by Russia, and that disrupted both food and fuel prices and caused enormous inflation. Now, all these had to be handled during the second term of the Prime Minister, and this is where his crisis management came. He didn't go down. What he did was, of course, took the daring step to do a lockdown, but then they began to fine-tune the strategy. And when I spoke to the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Dr. P.K. Mishra, Pramod Kumar Mishra, he told me that every leader was searching for a solution across the world because this was a complete unknown event when pandemic hit it. The second thing was that within no time, there was the issue of China, as well as in a year or so, in addition, there was Ukraine. What they did, the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister himself, was that they studied it very, very carefully. They analyzed every aspect of it and then presented the Prime Minister with a very clear picture as to what are the options, what needs to be done. But it was the Prime Minister's decision. And that is where he took a bold decision, a daring decision in terms of how there should be economic reform, how the kind of finances that are required for bringing the economy back on track, how to deal with China. He used the entire adversity and converted it into an opportunity for reform and for change in the country. Now let's come to Modi Mantra number 6, and I'm calling it the double B, which is be bold and brave. When the crisis hit, the pandemic crisis hit India, Prime Minister Modi was under tremendous pressure to give doles, to give money out to people across the spectrum. Every developed country, in fact, pumped money to people, and in places like the US, people were getting about $1,500 a month to sustain themselves, and these were well-to-do people as well. They're not poor, that was there. Prime Minister used targeted ways of financing the poor, gave them the money that they required, but he was very clear that he would not just give out doles. What he did instead was that he increased the capital expenditure of the government by almost 3 times. Now, that was very critical because private investment was almost not available at all because as you know, all offices had stopped. There was no production happening because of COVID. And to kickstart the economy, he pumped huge sums of money. And where did he put that money into? Into infrastructure. That meant building roads, building railways, building things that people would use, and therefore create jobs for the country. This began to pay dividends much later because all the economies that put a lot of money, what they call liquidity, prices began to rise in those countries and inflation became a problem. But in India, we were able to hold inflation. And most importantly, as the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, Dr. P.K. Mishra, told me that by infusing so much of capital expenditure, the results of that can now be seen because this year's GDP growth of 7.2%, that is between 2022 and 2023, is 7.2%, is the highest for any major economy in the world, which means India is the fastest growing economy on that, and that is a very creditable achievement given the kind of crisis we faced during COVID. Now that comes to Modi Mantra 7, and it is learn from your mistakes. Now Prime Minister Modi, in order to bring the economy back on track, used the occasion and the opportunity to introduce major reforms across big sectors. And one of them was agriculture. In agriculture, he introduced 3 new laws and said that he encouraged a greater deal of privatization into agriculture, diversification, and limiting government control. Very important because agriculture was stagnating, but the farmers were not happy about it. It was a far-reaching reform, but the way it was being implemented created problems for the farmers, fears that they had about selling their produce began to really get intense, and they came out on the streets and protested for almost a year. And when he found that the farmers were adamant that these laws had to be withdrawn, he said, for the very people that he had brought these laws. If they're not happy, let's pull it back. And he did that. He apologized to the nation. But what his aides said was that he learned from that. So when the next big reform started coming up, he said, let us study every aspect, let us take every stakeholder into account, let us not just bring, by talking to a few of them, believe that everybody's happy. And we saw that in the new education policy that took what is called the national education policy that has come after almost 3 decades. There was a huge amount of consultation, there was a lot of discussion before it actually became a policy, and hopefully that will have greater deal of success than what agriculture did. This brings us to Modi mantra number 8, and that is effective delivery or implementation. It has been 9 years since Prime Minister Modi has been in charge, and over the years, there's been a huge amount of welfare projects, large infrastructure projects that he has built. His main focus now for the next year or the last year in office in his second term is on implementation, getting things done, ensuring delivery to the last mile. And one of the techniques that he's using, along with Dr. Mishra, the principal secretary, is to monitor almost every day all the projects. He actually personally monitors this, gets all the files. He even has sent joint secretaries of the union ministries to various states to get on-the-ground data as to how much of these projects have been implemented and actually iron out all these problems that are there and ensure that whatever had been promised has been delivered. And that is a very important lesson, because it's one thing to announce big projects, another thing to put resources, but find that it is not going on the ground. Most important, when you give a welfare scheme or you do something, make sure that the person benefits from it, the one that is supposed to get it, gets it. Now that brings me to Modi Mantra 9, and this is about having tremendous connect. What Prime Minister Modi does is his ability to connect with the ordinary person. And I spoke to Professor E.S. Srinivas, who is a professor at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and deals with leadership issues. And in fact, the way Modi's style of leadership, Prime Minister Modi's style of leadership, is actually now a study in management circles. And one of the things that Professor Srinivas told me was his ability to get immediate connect with whoever is speaking. So he says on one day, he's addressing a gathering in Varanasi, which is his own constituency, and he says, Ganga Mai called me here. Mother Ganga called me here to speak to you. That brings tremendous emotional connect. And when he goes to Madnapalli in Andhra Pradesh, he says, and he knows they're tomato farmers, and he speaks about their problems, and he becomes one of them. Now, this is something that Prime Minister Modi has specialized in, which no other leaders did, which was to go beyond the press, beyond the media, people like us, and go directly and reach out through his Mann Ki Baat that he has every month, and through direct talks with them as to what their needs are and connect with them directly. Professor Srinivas says this is a unique quality, because what he does is he is able to identify, he creates identity, and identity is a very, very powerful tool in terms of emotional connect. The second thing he does is he evokes pride. Now, these two together make the people trust in him, and that is what is the base of his support. And that's why, even though he may not give press interviews or doesn't do the kind of things that politicians used to do before, he still has the connect, and that's a major mantra. And this comes to my final Modi mantra, and that is Modi mantra number 10, which is remain in the moment. Let me be very clear that there are many more mantras. I'm not getting to that because Mr. Modi is an extraordinary leader, but this is the 10 I've distilled from speaking to his close colleagues, and one of them was Piyush Goyal, the Union Minister of Commerce and Textiles, and he told me this very interesting conversations that he's had with the Prime Minister Modi and his interactions with him, where he found that whenever he met him, Prime Minister Modi was extremely focused. He would get to the point quickly. There was no time for idle chatter. The other thing was, when he had food, he really didn't focus too much on that. When Mr. Piyush Goyal asked him, don't you go on holidays? Don't you have vacations? Don't you, what about food? And he says, I don't live to eat, I eat to live. And the other thing that Piyush Goyal noticed was his ability to have a photographic memory. Now, he gives an example where he had made a presentation of around 50 slides on a particular project, And Mr. Modi looked at each of them, and at the end of the entire presentation, he said, take out slide number 6. And mind you, Prime Minister Modi does not have a pen or paper, he makes no notes, it's just clean. And he said, in slide number 6, you had a particular anomaly that is not in consonance with your theme. Please change that. Piyush Goyal was stunned because here he was, he thought he had made the perfect presentation, but it is that ability, that photographic memory to be in the moment, despite the 1,000 things that Prime Minister Modi is doing, the number of issues he has to face, when he's sitting with you, he's focused, he's hard focused and looking at you. So those are the 10 main mantras of Modi's success. Next year is going to be the general election when Prime Minister Modi will be competing for a third term. Currently, he's in pole position, and given the extraordinary abilities that he has, seems the favorite to win the general election. But we are a democracy, and the people will decide that. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me the next time. Nothing but the truth.